Want to learn how to saw metal with one of these? This video will show you how. To saw metal with a jeweler's saw, you want to be sure that you're set up properly. One thing that's really important is a bench pin that has a V cut out of it so that that'll support your metal while you're sawing. Also, you want to make sure that you have the right size blade for the metal that you're going to be cutting. So there's a chart that corresponds the thickness of the metal to the size of the saw blades. Generally about 2 teeth on the saw blade for the thickness of metal. The saw blades are numbered in a way that as the number gets bigger, the size of the saw blade gets bigger for thicker pieces of metal. And then if they add a 0, like 2/0, then those are the smaller sizes for thinner metal. As you can see, it's a really fine blade, and you want to be sure that you have it pointing the right direction. And so you want to have the teeth pointing out of the saw frame and down towards the handle. And then also you want to have a proper tension for the saw blade so that if it's too loose, it'll catch on the metal and break, and if it's too tight, it'll also snap easily as well. If you haven't sawn metal before, be prepared to break a bunch of blades. That's completely normal. Every beginner does that the first time around. So I have the blade set up properly for the thickness of metal we'll be cutting, and then also I have it clamped down in the bottom of the saw frame. I'm now going to adjust the tension, so you just apply a little bit of force. Place the saw blade down into the top clamp, tighten it down there, and you should have a little bit of a twang to it. I'm not a musician, but you just want to make sure that that has a little bit of tension to it. You also want to use lubricant when sawing. So there's a variety of different products, or just good old beeswax works well. You want to go from top to bottom so you don't get too much wax caught up in the teeth or anything like that. So you have it lubricated, you have a proper tension, the right size blade. You also want to make sure that you have eye protection, because while sawing, if the blade does break and it's under tension, it can shoot a small piece, and you want to make sure that your eyes are protected. So safety first always. So you set up with the piece. What we'll be doing is we'll be cutting out the outside circle first, and then I'll show you how to pierce or cut out openings inside of the metal after we do that. So you set up, and you can saw either on the outside of the bench pin or in the middle, whatever is comfortable for you. Usually to get started, what I find is sometimes the teeth catch awkwardly on the metal. So what I like to do is just sort of angle it and rub upwards and have a little bit of groove cut in there. The teeth only cut on the downstroke, and you want to make sure that the blade stays perpendicular to the surface of the metal. That'll be the easiest way to cut. If it's on an angle, then the blade actually thinks it's cutting thicker metal than it really is. So you're set up there, and you don't want to pull too tightly through the metal. It doesn't take a lot of force, because again, you can just snap the blade right off. So you want to get started there. And just pushing forward just slightly, and you can actually move the metal into the saw, keeping the saw moving up and down with just a slight forward pressure. As you can see, I'm not using a lot of force. I can even hold it just with index finger and thumb. Nice even strokes. Keeping the saw frame straight up and down. It's also helpful to have good posture if you're going to be doing this for a while. So you want to make sure both feet are flat on the ground. Your back is nice and straight. Now, if you haven't sawn metal before and it's not going as smoothly as this for you the first time, don't worry. Practice makes perfect. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just keep the saw in approximately the same place and just rotate the metal into the saw frame. And the more precisely that you saw the line, the less cleanup or filing that you'll have to do later. And we'll cover filing in a different video. since there's quite a bit of little tips and tricks to that as well. Sometimes if it's starting to catch, you might need a little bit more lubricant. So again, just swiping from top to bottom again there. And there you go. Okay, so now we're going to pierce or saw out the anvil in the inside of this circle without sawing from the outside, because we don't want to have another additional saw cut there. So what we need to do is drill a hole that then thread the saw blade through there to cut on the inside. So first what I'll do is I will center punch where I want to drill that hole, and that'll be on the inside of the shape that we want to cut out. And we have another video that will cover center punches. And then I will place it on the bench pin and just drill. You could also use a drill press for this. And with drilling, you want to make sure again that you have proper eye protection and that your drill is lubricated and perpendicular to the surface of the metal, and that you hold on to the metal securely. A little bit of force through there. You want to make sure that the hole you're drilling is bigger than the saw blade that you need to thread through it. So then we'll take the piece through there, thread it on, again adjusting the tension of the saw blade, clamping it down at the top under pressure, just a little bit of beeswax lubricant, and then you can follow the line. And sometimes with piercing, it's easier to have it supported over the V of a bench pin. So again, kind of rub and get that groove, keeping the saw frame perpendicular to the surface of the metal and following my line. Now in this case, I've printed out the design I wanted and glued it to the piece of metal. You could also just scribe out directly onto the piece of metal that you want to saw. Now with corners, what you want to do to get a nice sharp corner is you don't want to push forward too much because you'll get a radius. So you kind of pull back a little bit, rotate the metal a little, and then start moving forward again. And you can get nice sharp corners that way. And what I'm concerned about is this side of the drawing, not the inside, because we're just going to get rid of that. Now for this nice sharp corner, again, I'm just rotating the metal, keeping the saw blade moving up and down, but not forward, kind of pulling back a little bit to get that nice sharp 90-degree corner. And same thing for this little corner. All right, and then we're off again. And you can either rotate the metal or rotate the saw frame for the direction that you need to saw, or a combination of both, whatever's comfortable to you. And again, the closer that you can follow your design, the less filing that you'll have to do later for cleanup. Some of those corners again. Not moving forward, just pivot, moving up and down and pivot. Pulling back a little, pivot. Pulling back a little and pivot again. Nice long curve. Keeping the blade, it's perpendicular to the surface of the metal. It's easy to forget that. Another sharp corner here. Pulling back, rotating, and we're off again. Same technique on those corners. Take some practice. Now it can help when cutting on a line, I know this seems weird, but to actually pick a side of the line that you're going to saw against. So if you try and saw directly on the line, you have a tendency to kind of wobble a little bit. But if you pick a side of the line, so that I'm sawing on the inside of the line, it can help you sort of keep a straighter line while sawing. Got another sharp 90 here. And with practice, you can get very, very precise, so there's almost no filing cleanup necessary afterwards. Nice even strokes, not a lot of force. And as the metal is getting closer to coming all the way out, it'll get loose in there. Sometimes fall out. And then I'll just saw out this last corner. Last little 90. And watch when you're finishing a cut that you don't have your finger directly in front of the blade. It can sometimes lunge forward a little bit or even snap. So there we go, and you can release the piece from the blade, and there we are. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can hear from me when I post future videos. Thanks for stopping by.